Welcome back to Invest in Jersey. My name is Gohar Gregorian, and I have a pleasure today speaking with an experienced attorney, Earl White, on the topic of open public records. Let's get started. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and comment. We always love to hear from you. Welcome, Earl.
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. Earl, please explain to our audience what an Open Public Records Act request is and why it's essential for real estate investors to run them.
So an Open Public Records Act request is a submission you can make to a government agency. So a city, municipality, you can make one to the county, you can make one to the state in a specific agency, and you request whatever records you're looking for. Now, in the context of real estate, it's often permitting type issues, but it really could be, a broad range of issues that you might request records for. So you submit the request to the municipality or whatever government agency you're asking for, and they have 8 business days to respond to your request. And so that's basically, in a nutshell, what an Open Public Records Act request is. When you're submitting them, you don't want to make them overbroad because the municipality or government agency can decline them if it's not clear, if it's overbroad, and then they wait 8 business days to respond, and then they could just not respond or deny it. So that's the idea of what an Open Public Records Act request is.
Thank you, Earl, for shedding light on the importance of Open Public Records Act requests and how they can significantly benefit real estate investors. Building on that foundation, could you give us the proper mechanism and timing for submitting this request? How crucial is it for investors to adhere specific timelines in both submission and receipt of request records?
So an Open Public Records Act request is critical for real estate transactions, particularly for investors or any person that's buying real estate because they are investing their money in a piece of property. And the reason it's so critical is that the public records have important permitting information, important property information that may be pending. For example, there could be a pending zoning hearing, and you would get that from the Open Public Records Act request. Or there could be open permits or open code violations, or there could be historically open permits or code violations that the parties have reported are resolved, but which in fact are still open as a matter of public record. And so it's critical to have that information because it can seriously impact your property value. For example, if you conducted an underground tank sweep for an underground tank, sometimes, I just dealt with one last week, that they missed the underground tank. But if you go pull the public records, you could find out that there was an abandoned tank. So they took the oil tank, they filled it with foam and left it in the ground, which was okay 30 years ago, but not okay now. So you can get information like that, or you can get information regarding septic systems. That might not be in a city, but a lot of times you could find an abandoned septic system if the septic converted to public water, public sewage, and then that's something you'd want to have removed too. So that's a couple examples of information that you can get from the Open Public Records Act request that you might not have just from talking to the seller. Also, if you're the buyer, trust but verify. I always tell all my clients, you really, whatever the seller tells you, take it with a grain of salt. Do your due diligence, and that really involves pulling the records from the city if you want to have your full knowledge of the property.
Thank you, Earl, for outlining the proper mechanism and timing for submitting OPRA requests. Now let's dive in deeper into specific records that real estate investors should include in their requests. Please tell us on what records should be requested as part of an OPRA request and significance of each.
So just to clarify, the timing, I know I didn't specifically answer that question. So the actual timing of you should do it once you go under contract, you want to do it right away because they say they're going to respond in 8 business days, but the municipalities often will ask for an extension. So all of a sudden 8 business days becomes 30 business days, and you have it, particularly some municipalities are worse than others. So that's the timing, right away, and then to get that out. Now, in terms of the specific records that we always request, and again, I want to stress that do not request all records concerning a property. Do not ask for that because you will get denied, and then you'll get nothing. And if you have a quick closing and you spend 8 business days to get nothing and then have to submit it again, you can be at the closing date where if you get the records, then you won't have time to follow up on them. But in terms of the specifics that you're looking for, any closed permits, any open permits. Now, in some cities, they have a certificate of occupancy requirement, right? And that will cover some of these issues, but not 100%. I've certainly come across times where cities have approved a certificate of occupancy but not closed a permit. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Like that was an error. Or some cities, as you know, don't have certificate of occupancy requirements. Like Jersey City, say they don't have a CO requirement, and that's a place where there's tons of underground oil tanks, right? So if there's history there, the only way you're going to get it is the Open Public Records Act request in those cities that don't have the certificate of occupancy requirement. So what do you want to request? Open permits, closed permits, anything related to underground tanks, septic systems, water wells, anything relating to contamination, anything relating to tax assessments, potential increase in taxes, anything relating to zoning changes. Those would be the main things that we're usually looking for. Code violations as well. Any open or closed code violations, disputes with neighbors. That's probably the most important ones that would impact your property value. There can be other things, like if you were specifically concerned, say there's a bedroom, an additional bedroom on the property. The seller says we got open permits. You may want to verify that. And the best way to do that is with an Open Public Records Act request. To pull those permits.
Thank you all for highlighting the importance of requesting specific records through OPRA requests. Now let's shift our focus to the next crucial step in the process, reviewing the obtained records. Could you walk us through the best practices for reviewing the records once investors have obtained them?
This is an example. This is where having a real estate attorney that's familiar with this is very helpful. Because the records, you can imagine, so when you ask for these records, right, you might get a PDF of 60 pages, some of which with handwritten scribble about, some of them could be from the 70s, 80s. So interpreting them is sometimes, a difficult task. So if you're looking for permits, you're generally looking for them to be signed off on and a description of the permit. Now, so a lot of times you do have to be careful because when you're reading them, something may be unclear. The most important thing to do when something is unclear is you just get on the phone with the building department, the construction department, and not always, but oftentimes they will be helpful. If you say, look, I submitted my Open Public Records request, I have this record, I don't understand it, or I can't tell if it's open or closed, or I don't know what it means. The building department will then help you with that. If they're nice, not always, but they'll often help you with that. So reading them in detail, and then if you have any questions about it, then following up with the municipality to answer those questions. Now, if you don't have an attorney or a realtor or someone helping you out, and you don't understand the concepts of open permits, tax assessments, things of this nature, then interpreting those records is going to be very difficult. But leaning on your attorney or your realtor or whoever you're working with to understand what those words mean, if you don't have that background in real estate, is critical, because otherwise it was pointless. If you didn't know what you were reading or didn't take the time to read it and do the follow-up questions, then that's a problem. And usually, oftentimes, the gold is in the follow-up questions for the client. It's you get a record, you see something that you think is a problem, then you raise it to the seller and raise it to the city, and oftentimes it might be a big problem, or you might be able to clarify that it's not a big problem, which is also important for resale value, right? Like when you go sell, you buy a property, say you go sell, if the buyer's attorney is like me, we're going to submit an Open Public Records Act request, we're going to find something there, and we may raise it to you, right? So rather than you being surprised, you already have an answer. Oh, this got resolved this year, and this is why it's there.
Thank you all for sharing valuable insights on reviewing the obtained records. As we near the end of our discussion, let's explore the final essential aspect: what to do when investors encounter problems within the records. Could you enlighten us on the steps an investor should take when they discover issues such as open permits, code violations, or other concerns during their review on the records?
The first thing that we do immediately is we notify the seller. I don't waste time overthinking whether it's a problem or not. Because you can sometimes you have, like I said, you have a fuzzy page from 1980 or 1990 that you think shows there's an underground tank, or you think is an open permit. You could waste. Like I said, follow up with the city, but you could waste 3 hours doing that. Yes. So first thing we'll do, as my team knows, is that we send it to the seller and the attorney, the other seller, the other attorney, and the brokers. But we say, like, we think there's an issue. And then a lot of times there is an issue, like if it's a very proactive real estate agent, they'll take my OPRA. So I'm doing it for the buyer usually. And then the listing agent oftentimes will just take my OPRA and literally just walk to the building department. You know what I mean? They won't even wait. They just get it and they'll go get the answer. Sometimes in 24 hours, they'll say, yep, it's open. They're closing it now. So first thing we do is we give it to everybody. We don't overthink about it, because worst things comes to worst. If you send the record and that it's a closed permit that kind of seemed open, the worst thing is the seller responds back and says it's actually closed. You're not reading it correctly. I'd rather get it out there to everyone right away, let them analyze, let them give me the feedback, rather than sitting and waiting 3 or 4 days, and then when people could have been taking active steps. So first step, send it to everyone working on the deal. Obviously, not in an offensive manner. Be like, hey, we ran an Open Public Records Act request. We found this. Does the seller have any knowledge or any information, about that? Usually then like a broker or maybe the attorney, or maybe sometimes the seller, if they forwarded the seller, sometimes the seller will work on it. And most people realistically know that the buyer has legitimate concerns and they will want to try to resolve this, and would prefer to resolve it right away. So first, send it to everyone. Don't overthink the process on that. Once you've done that, then also do your own due diligence and follow up. Like I said, trust the seller, but verify. So while the seller's working on it, you also call the building department, also talk to your attorney, talk to your realtor, maybe talk to, if there's something relating to an inspection, you can talk to your inspector, but do your due diligence individually on your end. And so that's sort of the 2 things you can do with the information. I guess that's it. Talk to the seller, do your own due diligence. At that point, if you have an issue, then you have to figure out what the resolution is, right? If it's an open permit, you got to find out what does it take to close the permit. If you have a code violation, what's it going to take to close the code violation, so you can hold the seller accountable for that. And then also if there's fines associated with it. So there are some nuances that you do have to have experience to properly interpret, but that's why, people get an attorney. Some people don't want to spend money on an attorney or choose not to have it. But then obviously, if you have a document that says code violation, then and you're not familiar with code violations or how to resolve them or who to talk to, or you're busy, you don't want to do the legwork, then that can be problematic for the client. But leaning on your real estate professionals, notifying the seller, working with the building department, that's really what you can do to act on that Open Public Records Act request.
Before I conclude our interview, I want to give my appreciation to Earl White for being here today. If you found this interview valuable, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we always love to hear your comments. Thank you for watching.
This is Earl White, real estate attorney. We do real estate leasing, purchase and sales across New Jersey, and that's our primary area exclusively in real estate. If you have any further questions about real estate or Open Public Records Act requests, you can give me a call, 201-389-8275, or you could go to our website, www.earlwhite.law.